We're going to go straight to Michael Schwartz, who is joining us right now. He's a witness who was there. Michael, what exactly happened? Can you explain it for us?
Well, first of all, my wife is confined to a wheelchair, and I was there along with my 2-week-old grandson who was in a buggy. So we did not have the option of fleeing. We had to stay there, kind of laying on the ground. I had my wife as close to the ground as I could get her in the wheelchair. And the baby buggy, we had them both positioned behind something that was somewhat of a protection. But because of this, and partially because I couldn't believe that this was not fireworks, I stood up to see what was going on. And I've really got to... I know this is going to go against the grain of what people are saying, but I saw the shooter. I saw his gun. In between the rounds, I stood up because he was reloading, and I thought it was safe. And I saw him. He was a young kid, skinny, and he was in a military shooting position very close to the ground, the kind of position only a young, skinny kid could get into. And when he began shooting again, I hit the ground again. But I had a good look at this guy. He was not on a rooftop. He was on the street. He was right behind the street post that had a stop sign on it, and he was shooting from behind that. This information about being on a rooftop, just because there was an access to the rooftop, doesn't mean he was there. I mean, I saw this kid, and by the way, I saw when he got up and ran. When the gunfire stopped, I looked, and he got up and ran, and I saw him run north on 2nd Street. And at that point, I knew we were safe, and I was able to get my wife and our grandchild out of there safely. But in doing so, we had to go around a dead woman who was shot, and ahead of her were probably 6 or 7 people who were down on the ground. But my first concern was to get them safely.
What were your immediate thoughts when you saw that shooter, when you say you made eye contact with him?
I couldn't believe that this was happening. It was too bizarre.
And of course,
and the noise, by the way, I was sure the noise was fireworks because I had never heard. Of course, I had never heard an automatic weapon, but it was pop, 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 pop. And I thought, that's got to be fireworks. No gun could fire that fast, but obviously it was. Now, there were only 2 sets of rounds fired. The first was about 30, and the second was about 30, and that's when he stopped and turned around and ran. And by the way, it took the cops, it seemed like 5 long minutes. Maybe it was less than that. And one guy showed up, and I stayed there because I knew we were safe. I stayed there because I wanted them to know where he went. And I yelled at this guy, and I pointed to the direction he went. And the guy looked around like in the sky and all around. And I said, go after him. And, eventually he started walking, sauntering down the street.
Michael, your wife was in a wheelchair. Your child's in a wagon. How long did it take you to get them to safety?
The wagon, the baby buggy.
The baby buggy.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
How long did it take you to get them to safety? What were you doing in those moments getting them to safety?
I saw that he had run down the street, and I knew that we were safe. There was one guy firing. He was firing from where I could see him, and when he was gone and went the opposite direction to where we would go, we didn't take our time. I went as fast as I could, but you don't go too fast pushing a wheelchair.
Just to kind of explain the parade and part of what this day means, of course, how far into the parade was it when this shooting broke out?
It was almost immediately after the parade started. What happened was the band went by. The band was, I think, 2nd or 3rd. The parade started at 10. The band went by maybe 7 minutes into the parade. And at that point, my guess is the shooter didn't want to shoot a bunch of kids in the band. Oh, and by the way, they say these were random shootings. This kid that was doing the shooting had a scope on his rifle. I saw the scope, and I saw his eye in the scope. I mean, I didn't see the eye, but I saw him looking through the scope. He was deliberately shooting. I think he was deliberately trying to get adults so that children weren't hurt, but I could be wrong about that. Anyway, let me back up. You asked when it happened in the parade. Well, as soon as the band left, there was a gap in the parade, And in that gap is when he started firing, because at that point he could fire across the street to where we were standing, to where there was a large crowd.
All right, Michael Schwartz, thank you so much for sharing your story. We appreciate it.